Question number 3, Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what progress has the national-led government made in building a more productive and competitive economy capable of supporting more jobs and higher incomes for New Zealanders?
Mr. Speaker,
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, the national-led government was elected 5 years ago tomorrow, and I'm pleased to report that very considerable progress has been made in that time. In fact, on just about every score, the economy is in much better shape than it was in late 2008. Back then, the economy had been shrinking for 4 quarters. In the past year, the economy grew by around 2.5%, one of the highest rates in the OECD for that year. This is helping to push business and consumer confidence to their highest level in many years. Businesses are indicating strongly they plan to invest more and hire more staff over the coming year, and this was confirmed in the employment data issued yesterday.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Paul Goldsmith.
To the Minister, what other indicators confirm that the economy is in better shape than it was 5 years ago?
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, there are many of them, and perhaps you could just let me run through a few of them. Before our first budget, the Treasury told us that if we continued with the previous policies, we would run deficits forever, and net debt would soar to over 60% of GDP by 2023 and never come down. Under this government's responsible economic and fiscal management, we are now on track to surplus in 2014-15. Net debt is expected to peak at below 30% of GDP, despite the $15 billion expected cost to the Crown of the Canterbury earthquakes. On the subject of debt and deficits, back in 2008, the current account deficit was almost 9% of GDP, and New Zealand's net external debt had blown out to 84% of GDP. Now the current account is 4.3% of GDP, less than half what it was 5 years ago, and net external debt is 71% of GDP.
Supplementary question, Te Uraroa Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou. To the Minister, what confidence does he have that the decline in the not in employment, education and training rate for youth, which was announced yesterday as falling to 11.4%, is an indication that our young people are being actively employed or in study, and is a similar decline being experienced for Māori?
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, yes, the HLFS showed yesterday the NEET rate for 15 to 24-year-olds falling to 11.4%, which is the lowest level since the December quarter in 2008, and that's great to see. The number of NEET for Māori was flat this quarter, but the government has a range of initiatives that are improving Māori employment and education outcomes. For example, Māori and Pacifica Trades Training, Youth Guarantee, vocational pathways, and a focus on Māori and Pacifica attending university, with domestic tertiary enrolments for Māori students at 21% in 2012, up from 19% 5 years ago. I was pleased to see that overall Māori employment has increased by nearly 5% over the last year, and unemployment has dropped by 2.9% at the same time.
Supplementary question, Paul Goldsmith.
To the Minister, how have families benefited from the government's economic program over the past 5 years?
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, 5 years ago, annual inflation for consumers was running at more than 5%. It has now fallen to a little over 1%. In 2008, food prices alone jumped 11%. They've gone up by only 1.2% in the last year. Floating mortgage interest rates averaged almost 11% in 2008. They are now less than 6%, although forecast to rise somewhat next year. New Zealand's superannuation payments have increased by 25% over the past 5 years. The tax system has been made more progressive, reducing the proportion of net income tax paid by those on lower incomes. Taken together, these positive indicators are helping New Zealand families get ahead after several challenging years. This government has a busy agenda to ensure this progress continues.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, if things were positive, would not even the most obsequious National MP know that? So how does he explain the endless, repetitive questions in the Goldsmith vein, or the interminable time he is taking?
Order. could the member just ask a supplementary question that is consistent with standing order?
Well, I have, and I am.
No, the member hasn't.
You haven't heard me finish yet.
I'll give the member one more chance.
Well, you gave him a long time to answer that
Order!
question.
If the member wants to remain in the chamber for question
I'm not
time,
being thrown out for that.
I will give the member one more opportunity to ask a question, supplementary question that is in line with standing orders. Point of order, the Honourable Winston.
Could you please tell me what was wrong with the question I was asking?
It was unnecessarily long. It was very hard for me to even decipher what the question was, and it was derogatory of some national members of this House. Would the member order? If members want to be leaving this chamber before the end of question time, today they will be. I invite the Right Honourable Winston Peters to ask a supplementary question.
All right.
Order!
If things were positive, would not even the most obsequious MP, party unnamed, know that, and how therefore does he explain the endless repetitive questions in Mr Goldsmith's vein, or the interminable time he is taking to try and convince his nervous backbench colleagues that something positive is happening?
Order. I invite the Honourable Stephen Joyce to answer that question if there's much ministerial responsibility.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I appreciate that the member is obsessed with the politics of this place, but actually New Zealanders outside of this House of Representatives are very interested in hearing about the progress of the New Zealand economy. And the member may be bored because he's been here for so long, but actually the rest of the world is very interested to learn.
Point of order, Speaker.
Point of order.
Mr Speaker, now, he cannot possibly be allowed to get away with that, given your restraints against my asking the question.
The member will resume his seat.
Well, I haven't finished it.
The member will resume his seat. Otherwise, he will not be remaining in question time. The member can reconsider his question in line of a question which I think was very, very marginal. He has every right to receive the answer he's getting from the Honourable Stephen Joyce. Supplementary question, Paul Goldsmith.
To the Minister, what new policies is the government undertaking to continue the positive economic momentum?
Oh, well.
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, here's an opportunity to explain to the House, including the elderly member opposite. On behalf of the Minister of Finance, I am pleased...
Order. On this occasion...
Point of order.
Order. I'm on my feet. Well, I'm on my feet. On this occasion, I can anticipate the point of order. The Minister will repeat his answer without any reference to the age of any member in this House.
Well, that's not my point of order.
Then I will hear the point of order, provided it is...
The standing orders give me a right to raise a point of order, particularly when an ageistic inference like that there has been swung across the House, particularly when he's the one that's got no hair on his head.
Order. I have just addressed that point of order. Order! I will not put up with another spurious point of order being raised by the Right Honourable Winston Peters this question time. Now the Minister will recommence his answer without any reference to the age of any member in this House.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
Order. Now I apologise to the Minister. I think we have a further point of order. Brendan Horan.
Sir,
Order. Now, just let me make it clear. If members want to stay from this side of the House for balance of question time, this is a point of order, and it will be heard in silence.
Sir, in the past 3 days, that member has got away with slinging insults at members in this House, the type of insults that you wouldn't tolerate from the newest member of this House, and yet again, that member gets another warning, sir.
Order. I have not had an opportunity to phone them. The member, there was an insult cast yesterday that I think was unparliamentary. The member, Mr Horan, took objection to it. I hadn't heard it, but after reading the Hansard, the member makes a good point, and if I was to hear such an interjection and if the member was offended, I would deal with it appropriately. At this stage, the matter has now passed. Now I invite the Honourable Stephen Joyce to answer the question.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, and slightly hurt at the reference to my high forehead, I am pleased to advise that the initiatives keep on coming. A sample of announcements that the government has made in just the last few weeks include the progress on the work on the Transmission Gully Road, which is very important, of course, in the Wellington region, the new technology incubators to speed up company startups, which was announced last week, new social housing developments for Auckland to grow the private provision of community housing, $260 million to support the rebuild of the University of Canterbury, the launch of the New Zealand Story to help firms leverage off a strong narrative about New Zealand's uniqueness, proposals to bring down the cost of building materials to support our housing supply program. Mr Speaker, new direction for Te Puni Kokiri and economic development, $30 million to develop new schools, policy changes to attract more international students to New Zealand, and a record $59 million in Marsden Fund grants for top researchers. As I said, this is just a sample of our announcements within the last couple of weeks. Plenty more to come as the economy improves, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable.
We were willing to listen to such a long diatribe so long as chorus was listed in there somewhere, sir.
Order. That member, as a very senior member of the opposition, should also stand to his feet and raise points of order that are legitimate. Question. Oh, supplementary question. Paul Goldsmith.
To the Minister. What?
Order. Supplementary question, Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what alternative approaches would put progress in building a more productive and competitive economy at risk?
Mr Speaker.
Order.
On behalf of the
Honourable
Minister of
Stephen
Finance,
Joyce.
I have given this quite a bit of thought. And there are some alternative approaches that would put our good progress at risk, that would cost jobs, push up interest rates and depress incomes. We know that those alternative approaches are because they have been tried in the past and they have failed. They include high and wasteful government spending, more costs and more taxes on households and businesses, more state control of the economy, and politicians running everything from the electricity market to risky insurance businesses and monetary policy. This government rejects all these nutty old ideas that are coming out of the Greens and Labor by the day.
Order.
We're going to rule that out?
Question number 4, Maliyyə Ture.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā koutou e te whare. My question is to